Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel. Welcome to another DIY video. Today I'm going to share with you some of my experience working on these things day in and day out on brakes. Now this is a Toyota Camry that we're working on. However, we're going to use this just as a platform. The advice I'm going to give you in this video applies to all Toyota models, or at least most of them. Now before we get started, if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. If you are new to the channel, first, welcome and thank you so much for tuning in. Check out some of my other videos. If you like the channel, consider subscribing to it, support it. But before we get started, I will tell you one thing. Every brake job starts under the hood. And most people will be like, wait, why are we even under the hood? Brakes are behind the wheels. Well, I'll tell you precisely why. Most people top off their brake fluid. So the brake fluid drops to mid, between maximum and minimum, they top it off. I don't advise you to do that because as your brakes wear down, the fluid level will come down, and eventually as all four corners of the brakes are completely worn, it's actually going to reach almost minimum or at minimum. As you do the brakes, you compress the calipers, which I'm going to show you in a bit. The fluid will rise up to full again. If you top it off, now the level is all over the place. So if your brakes are all worn down and your fluid is at full, as soon as you compress the calipers, all that fluid is going to come gushing out. It's going to make a giant mess in your garage, in your car. It's going to go over the paint, start chewing it up. So before you get started, if you're only doing front brakes, make sure that fluid level is between minimum and maximum halfway. If you're doing all four brakes and they're all worn down especially, make sure you drop it to a minimum. Now, taking the fluid out of the brake reservoir right here, use something like this. This is a turkey baster. And I guarantee you this thing has never been near a turkey or haven't basted anything but brake fluid. This is one I use at work. Just put it in the reservoir, take out the fluid, get it out. I've already done that so we can save time. But it's very simple. There's a lot of methods, but this is the cheapest, easiest. You can find this at any hardware store. So let's get the wheels off and we'll catch you guys after the car is up in the air and the wheels are off. All right, everybody, so we got the wheels off. In case someone is following this as a DIY, all Toyota wheels are either going to be a 21 or a 22 millimeter lug nut. Some of them, like the ones that are not so Toyota, could be a 19 or a 17. But most real Toyotas, let's call them that, are going to be 22 and 21. The trucks are 22. Some of the trucks are still 21, but most of the sedans, SUVs are 21. So, caliper, bracket, rotor. That's what we're going to be working on today. So first, take off the caliper, 2 bolts, 14 millimeter. Most Toyotas are going to be 14 millimeter on the caliper bolts, 17 millimeter. Some of them, namely the Venzas, will be 12s. Some of the trucks will have 19 instead of the 17 that holds the bracket. So let me take the caliper off, take the bracket off, then we'll talk about taking the rotor off. So the first thing you want to do, as soon as you get the caliper off, is compress the piston. In case you have a locking up caliper or we got a problem, you know it right now before we're too late into it. So this is a tool that I'm going to be using. This is made by Blue Point by Snap-on. I will leave in the description below a similar tool that is highly recommended from Amazon. It is cheap. This is not the only tool you can use. You can use any tool you want. However, from the Toyota side, this is supposed to be the official tool that they approve. And you will see later that I'll use a different method for the rear. But let me compress this piston and then we'll continue. One thing I will tell you about the caliper piston right here. Do you see this rubber boot? There's a rubber boot around it. Every time you compress this, make sure that rubber boot didn't stick out. Make sure it's flat like this. If it does stick out, just get a screwdriver, pop the seal so you can release the air that it like balloons up. Make sure it's flat, because if that gets caught between the piston and the pad, it could rip this boot. Now dust can get in, and that's the caliper's highway to failure. I see this all the time. So make sure that this boot looks like this, just flat, nothing is sticking out. Moving on, and this is where the problems start. Just by looking at this, these are both aftermarket. The pads are aftermarket, the rotors are aftermarket, and I can tell from the look of the shim kit. This is called the shim kit or anti-rattle, anti-squeal. This is not original, and just by looking at this, this is missing a few clips here. I mean, sure, the engineers put it there. We can just throw it and move on. Don't do this. This is not right. We're gonna actually address it. The new pads that we have come with this, so you'll see that. So let me move on, remove the caliper bracket. We'll talk briefly about the rotor, and then we'll move on prepping everything. Now let's take the rotor off, and in your case, the rotor might have just popped right out. In this case, this is a beautiful Chicago rusty car, so the rotor is, of course, seized to the hub. Now I see people hammering here with a giant hammer and hitting and doing all this mess. Well, you hit this hard enough, and this is seized pretty good enough, you could actually bend the hub. That's not a great idea. Sometimes you have no choice, but just don't go crazy on this, wailing on it with a big hammer. Actually, even though this is an aftermarket rotor, and I'm very proud of them for putting this little hole, you can get a bolt, and I actually stole this from the car. This is from the exhaust manifold shield. It's an 8x125 bolt. You can get it at any hardware store. It threads right here. This is on most Toyotas. There are a few odd ones out there that you can't do this with, but most of them you can. And this is front and back. And we're gonna tighten this bolt. There you go. Rotor came right out. Sometimes you have to put two bolts to kind of work it out, but this is the best way. And again, if you don't have this bolt, this car is full of this bolt. The easiest one on a 4-cylinder Camry, let's say, exhaust manifold bolt. Just take it out. Exhaust manifold shield bolt. I'll put a picture for you so you can see it. So there we go. Rotor is out. We're good. Now, I'm not harping on the shop that this brake job, it's an aftermarket brake job. They're missing some parts. Some things were a little over tightened, but that's okay. They seem to grease everything, did a good job. They put grease here, which is actually not a bad idea. So let's talk about this for a second. I see people grab a grinder and start grinding this, making it all nice and shiny. Don't do this, but don't overdo it, because this is supposed to be a flat surface, so the rotor would sit down nice and flush, and it's not sitting crooked and causing any vibrations or issues. But overdo it, and now you're gonna create divots, and now the rotor is gonna sit uneven, and we're gonna have problems. Now, Toyotas never have the two screws that hold the rotor to the hub, unless you're some of the non-Toyotas with a Toyota badge, but we're not worried about those. So grab a brush, clean this up. We're not worried about making it shiny. If you live in the Rust Belt, this is not a bad idea to put just a little bit of grease, just a hint. We're not gonna go crazy also and create pockets. Just a hint. This will actually help it not rust as much. So guys, I'm gonna end this video right here. You guys have asked me to make shorter videos in multi-parts. So instead of having, this video was originally gonna be 35 minutes, but I'm gonna cut it in 3 parts to make it shorter, easier, but I'll make the parts come in the following posting days of the channel. So thank you so much for your input on that, by the way. I really appreciate your input and value it. Always let me know if you see something you wanna change. I'll take it into consideration. If there's something I can do, I would love to do it for you guys. I really appreciate you watching my videos. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of this new format. I hope you like this video or this series. Now it became a series. May the Lord bless you and keep you. You guys have a wonderful day.